Welcome to the Park and Recreation Committee, September 19th meeting. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll take a roll call of those present. If you could state your name.
Dawn Wittenberg.
Terry Cope.
Larry Schultz.
Mary Larson.
Jeanette June.
Tricia Pollock.
And Ann Monkey.
Okay. First item on the agenda is approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was held on August 15th. Those minutes were sent out in the packet. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay, motion by Dawn.
I'll second.
Seconded by Terry. Any discussion? Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve the August 15th meetings as they were delivered to you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Say nay. Motion carried. Any petitions, proclamations, suggestions, or complaints that you've heard, either you have or you've heard from friends, neighbors? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to old business. We have Tricia with us this evening, and I believe she's going to give us the Financing Public Capital Class 101 today. So, Ann, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. At the last meeting, we had talked a little bit about capital improvement program and the 2023 proposed budget. And I know that there were several questions regarding in particular, the financing or the potential to finance larger projects. I think the question was related mostly to trail projects because of the cost of them. If there were ways that the city could find some additional funding to do more at once versus where we have them staggered out. So, and then also the budget question, we had talked a little bit about the 12.2% increase plan for next year. And so there were some questions that I could not answer. So I've asked our assistant city manager and also our finance manager, Tricia Pollock, to come and talk this evening a little bit and answer any questions that you guys may have. So with that, Tricia, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Ann. Thank you for asking me to come this evening. So without really knowing exactly what, your questions might be, I can kind of do an overview and then you can kind of follow up with some questions. So as far as bonding for trails, so in order for the city to borrow money, you have to have specific statutory authority. And so that can get kind of tricky when it comes to things like parks and trails. So generally, the way that the city of Victoria has been trying to do the trails is by pay-go. So annually we do a transfer from the general fund into the trail gap fund, and with hopes to save up enough money to do some of these trails. Now, as you know, they are pretty expensive, so that can take some time. And sometimes smaller projects come up that then all of a sudden take precedence over saving for the $2 million trail, and such as like the Green Crest project was coming out, and now this smaller Bavaria Trail piece is going to be coming out of that fund. So right now, at the end of the year of 21, we had about $800,000 in that fund. But with Green Crest and that Bavaria piece, we will be spending down about $400,000 out of there. we are transferring, we have budgeted 200,000 transferring from the general fund into that fund for 2023. So then we will be at like right around 600,000. So that's kind of where that fund sits. As far as that proposed budget, so when you're looking at the park maintenance, that's out of the general fund, right, Ann, is what that was pertaining to. So previously, the Parks Fund, we had been doing some neighborhood trail renovation budgeting. We decided that we want to take that out of that long-term plan and put that into our trail maintenance fund instead. So instead of having $50,000 coming out of that Parks Fund, we reduced that transfer to the Parks Fund and we added it to the general fund trail maintenance line item. So that's part of that $80,000 increase, was that $50,000 for that trail maintenance. So that was a big portion of it. And then also, you know, with the inflation, most recently we did put in an increase to several of the line items to kind of be able to afford some of those everyday maintenance type of things. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. As far as bonding, again, the council has typically been showing an appetite for paying cash for those types of things. In order to do bonds for trails, you'd probably have to do like a voter referendum. So it would have to go to, you know, at an election to the voters to ask the voters if they want to be levied for a trail of, you know, probably the higher, like the $2 million trails. There's not a lot of bonding authority when it comes to trails, like I said. So tax abatement's one option as well. However, you have to have the properties that have enough tax to abate, and also there's limits on that, which the city has some other projects that are tax abatements, so it would be pretty difficult to be able to have the authority to bond for those as well. So that's basically, with parks, there's very rarely do you see a city do a special assessment for a park. I mean, if it was like right in a neighborhood maybe where all those, just that neighborhood was benefiting, but it's pretty rare that you would see a city do any kind of special assessments for a park. And I'm happy to answer any questions about budgets and bonding.
Okay, if I understood you correctly, you know, there's limited options. It's how we're doing it now, in a pay-as-you-go, or the bond, and that we'll skip the abatement thing because it doesn't sound like that's probably even viable option, even though it could be. If you look at the bonding itself, and I realize the city doesn't necessarily have an appetite for it, we're just trying to understand what would be involved in that to see if, as a committee, we would want to recommend something for consideration. So we need to understand a little bit more about it. If the city were to bond for, let's say, trails, and it would require a vote, what's the process to go? How much lead time do you need? How much time would it take to actually draw something up? And we're assuming that it, you know, obviously the council would decide if they even want to do this or not, but.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. We haven't done one of those, and with it being an election year this year, I don't know that we would have time to get something like that on for this year. So, I mean, it would probably be something you'd want to plan for probably at the next like major election, because you want to get the most people to come out as you can. And so probably that in 2 years, the 2024 election would probably be, I think that would probably be the best results for getting voters.
But it could be a different time. It doesn't have to be on
Right.
a general election.
Yeah, exactly. I just think it'd probably be more favorable to the council to get, you know.
Yeah, I'm just.
I could be wrong. I mean,
I guess we're not interested necessarily in the strategy right now as much as what's possible, and then
Yeah.
then we can determine what strategy might work or not work.
Sure.
But
yeah, I could get a timeline for you and get that back to Ann to give to you if you want, and find out exactly what we would all need to do. I don't have, the specifics on how much time it would actually take or when.
Okay.
But I would say, if you were looking at like one of the larger trails, obviously, it'd be like one of the $2 million trails that are kind of sitting out there in the CIP. That's something that, that would take a lot of prep, because we're going to want to get some good numbers on it too, and kind of so that we're not asking the public to pay for a $2 million trail that actually is going to end up costing $2.5 million, for example. So it could take some money just to do some of that research on getting the costs of a project as well.
would you say that the reason we even came up with the thought is we pay, and you kind of alluded to it, as we pay as we go. I mean, it takes forever to get one of these major trails. If we're putting in $200,000 a year, I mean, we're all going to be old and gone by the time we get a trail. And if I don't know what the last survey said, but the survey before, the community wanted trails, and maybe we've missed some of the opportunity when interest rates were so low. But it seems in a growing community, when the tax space is expanding, that there's an opportunity at lower cost to actually get something accomplished that's going to be there forever, as opposed to doing these incremental pieces. So I don't, from, you're a finance person, and, if you look at the big cost overall, what's it going to cost in the end? Let's say we have 5 trail priorities. Let's say we did all 5 of them and bonded for it. And you look at the cost of that compared to what we're doing now, which is putting money aside. And not only are we putting it aside, but it becomes more expensive. So by the time we raise enough money for the $2 million project, now it's $3 million, because it takes so long to get there. So can you give us a feel of what you think might be a more cost-effective approach? Not what somebody may or may not approve, but are we on the right track thinking that it might be cheaper to do it up front?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, that's definitely something, to consider, because, it's the costs go up on anything, as, when you're looking at any kind of capital purchases, buildings, vehicles, the longer you put it off, the more expensive it can be. I mean, but then the bonding, you do have all of the issuance costs and the interest and whatnot there as well. So I guess, there's, the transfer into the fund, we've been trying to raise it, $50,000 a year, but then, we have a lot of roads to pay for, overlays that we can't bond for either. So, I mean, we're putting quite a bit of money into roads too right now. There's a lot of overlay needs. So it just kind of ends up where the council's gonna prioritize, you know, are they gonna prioritize a trail transfer or a road transfer? You know, there's just a lot of stuff for them to consider. So, I mean, while the trails, a lot of people want them, and they're awesome, and everybody loves to have new parks and trails, there's also the roads that they actually have to have, so the council has to make that priority decision. So I think, you know, you're not out of line with what you're thinking by asking the voters, because they're the, you know, the voters are the ones that are paying for it. So I think that's definitely a fair question to ask. But I do think, you know, with some of these large investments in trails, that, you know, it's going to take some funding to just get to kind of that point where we can take it to the voters. So that's why I'd like to give you an exact timeline, but it's kind of hard with not knowing what all we would need. I'd need to talk to Ann and Kara probably more in depth on, you know, what kind of information are we going to need.
Tricia, have you seen any other cities do anything like this with specific to parks?
So it's not terribly common. Like what we did with Wasserman, we're using franchise fee funds. So that's, you know, an option that once that debt service is paid, so we have debt service for undergrounding of the utility lines, and then we have a debt service for Wasserman that those franchise fees are currently paying for. So, you know, once like the debt service for the undergrounding gets paid off, there would be available revenues to fund, you know, like a trail, that sort of a project. So that would probably be more what I would see cities doing, is using funds from like a franchise fee. Now, we could ask council to consider raising franchise fees too to fund some of these projects. I don't know if they would, how they would feel about that, but I mean, it's an option.
I've got a question about, has the city bonded for things in the past? Have they issued, you know, or sent the voters to a bond in the past?
Yeah, we don't have any referendum bonds right now, so
We haven't done any in the past?
not since I've been here. So I've been here 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, it's, if they did, it's been before my time. So yeah, we have debt service and bonds, but mostly it's for street construction projects. And like I said, we did do tax abatement for Wasserman and Marsh Lake Road a couple years ago. But then we were paying it back, the Wasserman, with the franchise fees. So
If I understood what the materials that were sent out on the different bonding, it appears that the city does not have to go to a referendum to bond for roads,
that's correct.
but they would have to for trails and parks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the roads too, most of the roads are like 429 bonds, which are like special assessment bonds, where there's a portion of the benefited properties are being assessed for a certain amount of at least 20% of the project. So that's the authority that we bond for those types of projects, and that's primarily what we bond for. We have some revenue bonds that we've done through our water and sewer funds. So it's just more difficult to bond for like parks, trails, facilities can be difficult as well. Roads.
Because you need a referendum, or
Right, because
is there another reason?
No, it's because of our it's because of our authority. So the state has statutes that tell local governments what they can and can't do for borrowing money. So we're restricted by their statutes on how we can.
Does the city of Victoria have a sales tax?
No. So Carver County has a road tax, but that would be the closest. So they do road projects, county road projects on a sales tax. So we have explored that. It's very difficult, especially right now with the current legislature. There was 3 cities that tried to get authority to do sales tax last year, and they all got turned down. And in order to do a sales tax, it has to be a regional benefit. So it has to be, you know, not just your constituents, but also it has to be because there's people coming into your community that are using certain, you know, amenities that's why they give you the authority to do sales tax.
Seems like trails would be one of those, since we have regional trails we're trying to complete.
And it possibly, but it would be probably a pretty tough sell to the current legislature. They've been very hardcore on what they're allowing, because they have to prove what you're using the money for too. And then they'll be like, for just the length of till that's paid for, and then they'll sunset your sales tax. And it's like I said, there was 3 cities that tried and got turned down, and now they have to like go through the whole process again, because that has to go to the voters too, and so they didn't get their.
The reason I brought it up is the last 2 communities I've lived in, they've taken advantage of that, and they've got some, you know, amenities in their community that they did get through the legislature. And you don't try, we don't get any place. So I guess what we're trying to do is figure out a way to get trails. And you know, we can come up with all kinds of reasons why we can't, but we're more focused on how can we get them, and you know, how can we make it happen. And so I just want to explore if that's even an option. I understand, you know, the politics of it and that, but at the same time, I do know communities that have gotten those, not this last year because of the conflicts in the legislature, but the years before that's happened, and it probably will happen once we get past this election, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think that pursuing the franchise fees would be easier than the sales tax, to be honest.
Brings up a question that says, the franchise fees, you know, that are for Wasserman, you know, when will Wasserman be paid off? Or?
So that is a 20-year bond, so the undergrounding will be paid off before that.
Okay.
I don't have the year on, but I mean, it's a ways out there yet. Okay. But, you know, as the community grows and you're adding more, you know, homes, the franchise fees increase. So, I mean, there's a possibility that, you know, there might be some availability, but I would say best bet would be after the undergrounding is paid off.
And I was just going to ask a question, like, you know, of our biggest projects, I know the numbers are there somewhere, the you know, the 5 big trail pieces that we're looking for, what's the total cost, estimated cost right now of those 5? Tricia, while she's looking at that, I want to say I'm glad I read that, all the background, I'm glad I read it early in the morning after 2 cups of coffee.
Oh yeah, I know. It can put people to sleep.
I'm like, okay.
Aware.
I'm digging down.
I'm gonna guess in that 6 million-ish
Okay, that's what I
with
was like.
that quick math.
Sure. I was just looking for a ballpark, but.
And things change, you know, certainly when, you know, like this evening, we have a concept plan that has some trail potential that, you know, we have a lot of money budgeted for it within the CIP, so that could change.
Yeah.
That will change the numbers, I anticipate.
Yeah.
You know, and if there's a road project that happens to come along, it certainly could change those dollar figures too for some of those 1.7 to $2.5 million trails. So, you know, that's why we're always looking for opportunities for that. So,
Looking for that windfall to come through.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to develop something, and we'll do the trail for you.
That's how that Cochia connection will happen because those two developments.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how these trails can cost more than a road. Isn't it? It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
But so the first debt service out of the franchise fee fund will be paid off in 2031. So got a ways to go.
Yeah.
I have another question on, you mentioned the $86,000 increase in the regular budget. That 50,000 of that was a transfer from trail maintenance.
So actually the trail maintenance, the neighborhood trails, we were budgeting that through the park fund previously. Just because that's where we had always had it. But we just felt like it wasn't a fit there. So we pulled that out, and now we're taking that as a line item out of the general fund, and I can pull it up.
I guess my question is if that was 50,000 was funded, in actuality, the increase for maintenance is only 36,800. Or am I not understanding that correctly? So the net effect of basically you're just, sounds like you're just allocating it to a different line item in the budget. So if you take 50,000 away and you add 50,000 someplace, the net effect of that is zero. And if that 50,000 is included in the 86.8, our actual increase for personnel and park maintenance is 36,800 over prior year.
Yeah, let me just pull up that budget real quick. Okay, so park budget. Park maintenance. Okay, so yeah, so we had previously we had budgeted prior year 93,200, and we changed that to 126.5, and that was mostly due to our trail maintenance went from 20,000 to 75,000 actually. So, and I believe you had budgeted to increase the trail maintenance regardless, and then we also had that 50,000 that we were going to budget out of the park fund, and we moved that into the line items. So that actually went up, 50 or 275%, just that one line item. So we obviously reduced costs in other areas as well.
You see what we're saying? If you reduce it 50,000 in one area and you add it in another, I understand from an accounting standpoint and a financial statement standpoint what you're doing, but the net effect is there are no new dollars out of the 50,000 that you transferred.
Right.
So you just moved it from here to there.
Exactly. Yeah, because it was in the CIP and we moved it into our general fund budget under maintenance. Right. So yes. I mean, so instead of transferring money out of the general fund to pay for that in the park fund, we just are budgeting out of the general fund. So we're not taking that money and moving it to the park fund. We're just using it within the general.
We understand that. I guess the concern that the committee has expressed in past meetings were along the lines of, are we allocating enough for maintenance to maintain the buildings and the parks and the trails that we have? It sounds like we're putting money in the trail fund, addressing that. The other piece is, park benches and shelters and, all the other things that we have, rec center. The community's made a big investment to have nice things, and we want to make sure that those things are maintained so they last as long as possible, and we don't have, we don't save a few dollars today to end up with major expense 4 years down the road because we didn't take care of something. Now we have an expense and we're buying stuff that we could have taken care of along the way. So we don't want to, it's kind of the pinch the penny type thing, pay me now or pay me later type thing. And we just want to make sure that, recommendations we make to the city council, and I think Ann's probably brought this up in your budget meetings, the importance of the maintenance piece. So that's what we're trying to get at here, and whether it's this year's budget or, subsequent year's budget, that we feel that maintenance is an important thing not to overlook.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it doesn't pay to build more new stuff if you can't take care of the stuff you already have. So, no, I think that's an important point. And we didn't pull anything back out of the budget that Ann had recommended. We just shifted that 50,000 from one fund back into the general fund. We've got 28,000 for grounds maintenance and landscaping, so like 16,000 for playground mulch, and so we've kind of got all of those typical maintenance pieces in there. And we normally have a playground in there each year. I don't remember, did we have a playground for 23?
Yes.
So, yeah. We typically have one of those for replacement. There's kind of a schedule set up for that, but yeah, we definitely are aware of the importance of the parks maintenance, and works really hard on budgeting for all of those pieces.
Other questions for Tricia?
I don't know, maybe I'm doing too much of an ask, but is there a way, to have an actuary, or maybe you can do that, but going at the rate we're going right now of piecemealing, putting just money into the park fund against if we took out a debt and did like, let's say a $4 million bond, what that would cost us versus if we kept doing it piecemeal, but adjusting it each time for inflation, how much that cost is going to compare. Because, our assumption is that we'll never get there because inflation will eat up what we've got, or, what we want. So it's like we'll never get there. So I don't know, that's, somebody to run a cost comparison of doing what we're doing now versus if we had a bond or some way to get some monies to do it all now.
Yeah, there would be, there's obviously an inflationary factor that you could probably estimate over, say 10 years. Say $4 million, and what is that trail going to cost you in 10 years? It's going to cost you $6 million in 10 years. Well, would it be $2 million in interest and issuance costs over the life of a 15-year bond or whatever? We'd have to.
Is that something you can do, or you hired it out? It's like the whole present value analysis.
Yeah, we could definitely
I mean, that's how you, I mean, as you know, that's how you arrive at what makes sense by doing the analysis. And but I guess I personally, and I'll let the rest of the committee speak for themselves, but I guess I'd like to see that because that helps us, guides our decision making, because maybe it's not as great as we think, or maybe it's really big, and then we have something else to bring up and say, okay, here's what we're thinking and why. And we understand it's not our decision in the end whether the city's going to bond or not, but I'd rather have the data, and then we can make an intelligent recommendation instead of just throw out a concept. So if you could help us, I would appreciate that. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for spending the time this evening with us.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Trish.
Yeah, thanks for pulling that information together, I think. Great.
Okay, next on the agenda is, did we cover the other, or we're going to go?
Yeah, those were kind of both combined.
Both together, okay.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the concept plan under new business. How do you say that? Amira or Amira?
Amira is, I believe, how it is pronounced. So, so yes, please keep in mind that this is only a concept plan or a sketch plan. So it's very, very early in the process. Generally speaking, the city on any development will get, where all of you have lived, they will bring to the city a concept plan that there's been limited work done, site work done. It's you know, a concept plan that they like to get the Park and Rec Committee, the Planning Commission. They usually have a neighborhood meeting, which I believe they had last week, just to kind of get a sense of feedback from the community on the sketch plat or sketch plan. And then from there, the city council, after it has gone through the groups, it will go to the city council again at a very concept level, which is what you guys will be reacting to this evening. And from there, they go into what they will call a preliminary plat, which then gets down into further the grading, the drainage, the pipes, the water, sewer. They will start getting into that in-depth detail. It's much like we do when we build parks, for example. We have a concept plan, and then we dig into the details and get that information all put together. So from there, it goes to a final plat. So it's a very long process with a lot of participation from especially the Planning Commission and the City Council, and with the Park and Rec Committee being focused on park dedication and trails. That will be your role this evening as we evaluate this. So United Properties has a purchase agreement on approximately 48 acres. And I think all of you are aware of where this property is. This is Highway 5. The Dairy Queen, I'm sure everybody knows where the Dairy Queen is, basically across the street here. Lake Bridge here. This is the Auburn neighborhood in Lake Auburn. And then here is Kelser Pond development to the south. Amir Properties is contemplating a 147 rental units for 55 plus community. They in their informational materials, they're looking at a lot of their people that are 70 plus, but available to 55 plus. So the site itself is, I'm going to go back to this site, the big blue site here is approximately 48 acres total in size. But as you can see, 6 Mile Creek actually runs through here, which you can see coming up from the north and going over to the south, or sorry, yeah, coming north, going over to Auburn Lake. But so you've roughly got about 11 acres of upland that they are working with for this project. The LRT, we'll get to that. This is the blown-in section of that LRT, which is the regional trail that has been within our comp plan, park plan for a number of years, which is roughly about 5 acres in size, the whole thing. So based on the current dedication, they'll be looking at between 1.5 and 2 acres of park dedication that they would be responsible for. But in early discussions with United Properties, they have indicated a willingness to dedicate this piece of property for trail purposes as part of this development if it were to go forward. The kind of give you a real basic concept of what this project looks like. Again, here is Highway 5. This is the 6 Mile Creek to the south. And then there's one single family property here. But then this is Sky Drive, which connects over into Lake Bridge neighborhood. They're looking at providing for about a 4-story building. Again, concept and size, so we haven't seen anything of what it looks like on the inside, once they get past this process, drilling down those details. So, and then there's this, I think they're calling it a courtyard, that is an upland that extends out to the wetland area that they would also utilize as kind of their open space, seating area, gazebo, grills, I would imagine, out in this area. They're also looking at, and I'll show you here, this little piece, this would be the courtyard area. So currently today there's a little culvert that crosses over the creek that they plan to look at as possibly an access from the apartments that would cross over to the trail area. Again, no details on that, and whether or not the culvert is a viable or option for them or not. So, kind of moving out a little bit. So we have a piece of trail that was acquired through an agreement with this property owner back in 2008 because of trying to get the Lake Bridge development to be able to connect up into our local trail system, which we went out and looked at earlier this year. We were right at this spot right here. So with the acquisition, if we were to obtain this through the development process, here is our existing gap. The 3 blue spots. The red spot is city property that we currently own. So it really lessens the certainly the amount of trail for this identified gap as we move forward. So basically that is my presentation on it, and certainly happy to answer any questions, get feedback from the group.
And my question is kind of related. Remember 2 or 3 years ago, just to the east, there is city property. It's an actual park.
Yes.
With nothing on it. And I'm trying to figure out where that is in relation to this. I don't know. I'm just wondering, is that
right? It's right here.
That's Salters.
Yes, it's right here.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I was thinking it was closer to 5, but it's
This is Kirklocken.
yeah.
And then this is Salters. I can, have to, yeah.
I didn't know if there was any way to, it's not as close as I thought it would be. But, we looked at that little piece of property is just a big hill. But it's a dedicated park, but nothing on it. And, I don't know. Well, my other question was, how are they going to get to it from Highway 5? I mean, do they turn into,
Because traffic is.
Highway 5? I just kind of went, it's a big complex, and people turning left or taking a right. I mean, that's a traffic issue.
Yes, yeah. Currently, right now, MnDOT has not, in preliminary discussions, MnDOT has not given them any access to Highway 5. So, again, all preliminary. They're proposing access through this little Sky Drive, which was constructed to access this property back in 2008, 9, somewhere in there. So,
Jeanette, I'm in Lake Bridge, and went to the open house last week, and Claudio had brought this up with me about 2 weeks ago. He was their house is within 350 feet, so they got a notice of the open house. We're further down. But in the information that was originally presented to Claudio about 2 weeks ago, there was a connection to 5. So we were a little shocked last week when we went to the open house and saw that there's potentially, I think there's going to be 251 stalls of parking coming in and out of our neighborhood. So that's a lot to push onto Sky, and in and out of Lake Bridge. So,
Do they actually come up in there, though? I mean, looks like it turns before you get up into the neighborhood.
so you come in, you take a left. There's a little island between the right of way there, and then once that island goes away at Sky Drive, and then you need to turn in through there.
A couple questions. One is this property sold, or is it contingent on this getting approved?
it would be contingent on.
Okay. And then the second question is on the trail, the potential trail on the light rail, the blue that you have highlighted there. What sort? I understand that the developer is proposing to donate that property, which would be great. The question is, how much? What's under? I mean, it's overgrown, I assume, over these years. What sort of work would be needed to, have a bona fide trail there compared to other trails we might do? Is it similar, or is the base already there, so it wouldn't require as much?
Right. So this was an old rail bed, or is an old rail bed. So there is a substantial rock base underneath the overgrowth that is there. So there would be some tree and brush removal and cutting back some of the treed areas through there. Since it is private property today, I have not been on the site for a number of years. So I don't really know what that condition is once you get in, but it is pretty overgrown through that area, but a good solid base underneath.
So that
it would require some work.
would require some work, but maybe not as much as if we're like the other trails we're doing from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's thick right now. I was down there the other day. But when you walk it towards the winter time, it's workable. I guess I'd be curious to find out maybe two things. What do we think it would cost to clean it up and push that through? Because it's the dedication is just the land. They're not paying to develop the trail, correct? That's on us.
Correct.
And the second thing is those 3 dots. What would be the cost estimate to acquire those? Do we have a sense of where that's at? I know you've done some homework on that in the past.
Before I would throw out a number on the, I could probably do a guesstimate based on, some of the work that we have done here. It was a number of years ago. You're probably, I'm gonna guess in that 100,000, 50 to 100,000 with the equipment and rock that would be needed to go through here. I've not approached or been given authority to approach anyone on the east side of this trail section. So I don't have a sense. One of the things that internally that we kind of talked about, because that corridor itself is pretty substantial width-wise. And, is there something that we could do to minimize the impact and the cost if we were to just try to find a 10 to 12, 15 foot piece through that property rather than the whole thing? So it's something that we will have to discuss internally about how we would approach that if this trail section ends up becoming city-owned property.
Why does the city own that red dot?
We purchased it
Oh, okay.
several years ago. The property was for sale, and we negotiated with the seller to acquire that piece of property back.
Right.
Because I knew we were going to need it at some point in time.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so what are you looking for from us? Are you looking for us just a concept? Okay. You're looking for a motion that we would be open to recommend that the LRT property be dedicated to the city for trail purposes as opposed to contributing to the park dedication. That in lieu of park dedication fees that the developer, we'd be open to the developer donating the land. Are there other questions?
And I do have a question, because earlier you talked about there would be like 1.5. So the LRT donation is about 5 acres. And earlier you said there was like 1.5 acres additional of park dedication. Is that right? So there'd be another 1.5 acres within the footprint. Can you clarify that for me?
the dedication based on our current park dedication ordinance,
Yes.
they would be responsible for approximately 1.5 acres of park dedication as part of the development. 1.5 to 1.9-ish, somewhere in there.
And so the LRT donation would exceed that minimum
Correct.
requirement. Yes.
So, there's, certainly there's the possibility, again, we're only in concept stage, that the developer may come and say, fine, we're willing to donate this. Again, these are always ongoing discussions and back and forth until we can come to an agreement. But the potential exists that they may be looking for something, whether that be cash for the rest of it that the city would have to pay for. They could be looking at a reductions of some sort of city fees, a tree replacement. So there's a negotiation that goes along with these projects that until we get to that final or preliminary plat, we don't know what that is exactly. But again, the developer has indicated a willingness to dedicate that property because there's not much that they can do with it, to tell you the truth. So.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? If not, is somebody interested in making a motion? this would be a recommendation to the council.
Correct.
Can you put it back up on the screen?
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I move to recommend that the LRT property be dedicated to the city for trail purposes.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, motion's been made by Jeanette, seconded by Mary, to recommend that the LRT property be dedicated to the city for trail purposes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of said motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item is the Recreation Center report.
Yeah, so each month I try to provide some information on our current memberships and also our check-ins. Again, usually our summer months are fairly slow, but we are starting to increase now. College kids have gone back to school, so some of those memberships we have lost through August, but I anticipate our pickleball friends will be coming back in to the gym as soon as the weather outside turns where they don't want to be outside. So I will imagine we'll be increasing those numbers come towards the latter part of October. So I also provided in your packet some information on check-ins to date. I think we've had 41,000 visits to our center. That's just the check-ins. That's not our hockey neighbors. We usually average, my guess is about 500,000 people that come through those doors on an annual basis. So, and then just provided some of our recreation programs that we have finished up through fall, or through summer. The fall brochure should have arrived at your doors fairly recently. Kudos to Holly for that, and also Kendra, our communications person. They really do a nice job with that. So that is all I have on that.
Okay.
The pickleball courts are coming along. Light bases were installed last week. So they are continuing on. It looks like the subsurface is ready to go for blacktop, but I don't have a timeline on that. The basketball court at Lions, we're nearly complete. People can certainly use it again. We have some grading and seating that needs to occur, and then around the tennis court as well. We're still waiting on a net. And then again, some rough grading and seating. So I anticipate those hopefully coming to a close, hopefully by early to mid-October. So.
All right.
They look great.
Yeah, that's nice to have those done.
Yeah. Getting
A
there.
buzz about the pickleball courts. Just people are going, how are they coming? How are they coming? Where? I said, they'll be ready next spring.
We had to finally put signs up on the doors that said they're pickleball courts and they're coming soon.
Okay, anything else for Ann? Anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up? If not, a motion's in order to adjourn. I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.